It is us, the taxpayers, the citizens of this country, who are the owners of the monies. It is not President Museveni. So, and we express these demands and requests through our members of parliament. The parliament is where the people of Uganda are represented. They represent our aspirations, they represent our priorities. And on this particular occasion, I must thank Parliament. They were spot on, but the President disagrees with them. Now, 300 billion is going to be taken to a private company, which is not, by the way, owned by Ugandans. ROCO is a company owned by foreigners. It came here in 1960s. It was brought really to prepare Namugongo for the visit of the Pope. And for reasons that we don't understand, it has remained to hang around. And now they are reaping our hard-earned resources, our taxes that are being diverted to finance an ailing company. And ROCO, among other private companies, has been reporting declines in its performance. It has been reporting losses. Now, a private company registers losses, and the resources of this country that would otherwise go to improve the livelihood of the citizens through agriculture, through health, through education, is sadly being channeled to fulfill the demands of a private company.
Okay. Looking at the rechanneling, we are going to be seeing the completion of these emergency health centers, which are being also really put up and also going to be standing still. And this is already, among others, the regional centers that government is also really trying to develop. And the final works also really, I believe, are going to be affected by this. And then one person out there may be asking, how is this going to impact on that ordinary Ugandan in that village in there? And how is this resettling also really going to mean to them? And what does this exactly mean to them?
Majid, you know that we have been registering declines in our social services, particularly the critical areas of education and health. And so, the implication of this decision to take away money from critical social services to really what I could call non-priority areas is going to impact negatively on the population. The access of the population to health care. You know, our population is increasing. The idea of having health centers, particularly the policy has been that you should have a health center 3 in every sub-county. But you go in this country, there are many sub-counties without health center 3s, including my sub-county where I come from, Bulefe.
Then the issue of cancer.
Yeah, cancer is affecting people.
This part of this was meant for that.
Yeah. And we have one here next door in a regional referral hospital. If you go, the former private wing, after constructing the storied building, which now has become the private wing, now the old private wing has been converted to a cancer center. It means that the services that patients of cancer will be accessing will be greatly affected. You know, if you go to Mulago, you may not have reached there. You see suffering. You see suffering of cancer patients. All cancer patients all over the country are referred to the National Referral Hospital in Mulago, where the space is not adequate. People are sleeping in verandas. People are sleeping in on the compound, and it is a huge problem. And cancer now, because of the challenges we're having in our chain of food chain, is becoming a big challenge, health challenge in this country. The numbers of patients is rising. So what we are establishing here in the regional hospital will be benefiting from these reallocations Parliament had done. And let me state something which the President and the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance are wrong on. They are creating an impression that, you know, Parliament has no business in the budgeting process. It is the role of the President and the executive. Once they have aligned priorities from their perspective, Parliament should simply rubber stamp. That is not envisaged under our planning process. Nothing of the sort can be far from the truth. If this was the situation, if this was the policy and the law, then there will be no need to refer the budget to Parliament. The executive will simply make it, draw the estimates, the work plans, and start implementing. The idea of taking the budget, the work plans, and policies to Parliament is for vetting and scrutiny. Where there are errors, where the priorities have not been got rightly, it is the role of the people's representatives, in this case Parliament, to review, to revisit, to advise, and make the necessary alterations and corrections. And so the idea the president is having, I know, is born out of his experience of coming to power. You know, those who come to power through war, once they're in office, they develop a sense of self-entitlement. And many people who fought in Luero, including our president himself, have come to power and they believe wrongly that, you know, the resources of this country belong to them. They are only doing a favor.
But that brings us to the question that you were once part of this regime that we're talking about today.
Yes, I was. That's why I left, because they are now violating all the rules. They are violating all the processes. They are not putting people first. You see, as I had explained, this money we are talking about, this budget we are talking about, belongs to the people of Uganda. It does not belong to leaders. And now one of the things NRM government has done is they have made this country to be a country of leaders, not a country of the citizens. So we have a huge problem by the way they perceive the way the resources of this country should be put to the proper use of the citizens of this country. And I would like to suggest that the citizens of this country should look at the example of Kenya. That is why Ruto is having problems. Because in Kenya, the citizens are alert, including the young people. They have taken up the responsibility of recovering their country from the leaders. So in this country, our leaders want to make this country about them and not about the people, about the owners of the country.
But you people are the ones supposed to change this.
Yes,
where is it going on, and where is it wrong? Because if looking at the fact that most of the now the arms that expose the arms also really between the arms of government among themselves, because between the executive and the parliament, because that shows and that clearly justifies
disjointed.
Yes, it means that there was something that didn't go on wrong, or they didn't go on well. And looking at the parliament, the 11th parliament, most of these members actually subscribed to
NRM.
And where did it go wrong, and where what didn't go on well? Because we are seeing now them being arrested.
Yeah, so Majid, partly, you saw the debate, you must have watched the debate in Parliament when this bill was returned. You must have seen how bitter and angry the members of Parliament were.
Were you happy about what you saw?
I was unhappy, but also happy, and that was the point I'm coming to. So the Parliament was angry, both opposition and also national resistance movement side. So that, to some extent, made me happy. What only made me unhappy is the fact that these reallocations are going to non-priority areas. But why I am happy is that reality is beginning to dawn on our members of Parliament, particularly those on the NRM side, who have been approving the demands and wishes of President Museveni without due regard to the wishes, aspirations, and the priorities of the citizens. They have been approving, Majid and our viewers, disproportionate amounts of our resources to classified expenditure, to security, to State House, to Office of the President. Funds that would have significantly improved the livelihood of the citizens of this country. If we channeled most of those funds to agriculture, to education, to health care, Majid, I can assure you, this country will be at a different level. Now, this whole idea of corruption in Parliament by way of bribing members of Parliament to approve a certain decision in a particular way is not new. This started by the executive bribing members of parliament to remove term limits. By that time, Majid, you must have been much younger. You may not have followed the developments. We had put in our constitution safeguards for peaceful and orderly transfer of power. Because since independence, we have never witnessed an orderly, free, peaceful transfer of power. We have always transferred power violently, through loss of life, through war, through coups. So what the framers of our constitution did during the constitution making process was to ensure that we put serious and strong safeguards in our constitution. Two of them. The first was term limit, that a president will only serve a maximum of 10 years. Which was amended by our parliament through bribery. Each MP was paid 5 million. Where was President Museveni that time? Why didn't he complain? Why didn't he arrest the members of parliament then? It means if we arrested members of parliament the way it is being done now, we will not have parliament that time. There will only be very few who will remain. The entire side of NRM will have been arrested. Now, that laid the foundation for bribing of members of parliament. So from that point, Majid, let me conclude. MPs now knew their value, in quotes, that if something is to be appropriately and conveniently processed, you must oil their hands. So it gave birth to the practice, to the culture, to the mentality of bribing members of parliament. So along the way, from the time they removed the term limits to the time they removed the age limits, the practice of bribing members of parliament became common. And so I am surprised that our president is complaining at the tail end.
This is actually
and I will be explaining why he is doing it now.
This is actually where I was coming to, because the president cited irregularities that have been also already marring the budget process over long period of time.
Over 5 years, he complained. He says 3 trillion. Yes, he has 3 trillion was reallocated.
Yes, he has been complaining about this for a long period of time now, saying that this has been going on. And you as opposition people have been talking about the corruption fight that President Museveni has already embarked on. What can you say about the kind of format we are also already seeing today? Are we going to be seeing it putting an end to the corruption that this nation has been painted for?
I have, Majid, you may have listened to me debating the question of corruption here before, and if you have, you know my views on this subject. I have stated on several occasions.
And in other words, who has promoted the corruption?
I have stated several times. One, the way NRM government came to power was through war. They fought a long, debilitating war of 5 years in Luero, and once somebody does that to come to power, it creates a sense of self-entitlement. So the people who come to power believe we have sacrificed, we fought, we shed blood, we died. And you must have heard some of the statements like, where were you when we were fighting? So the people who came to power in 1986 came with the idea that they sacrificed for this country, and so they are here to loot. And that laid a firm foundation and ground for corruption, which has now really become, as somebody made some fun on social media, as the main cash crop of the country, of this government. And we lose about 10 trillion of our national budget to corruption. This statistics is by government itself, by the IGG. And so, over the years, corruption has now become endemic and systemic. And if you remove corruption, I've argued this several times, and other people agree with me. If you remove corruption, NRM government will collapse. Because corruption has now become the vein, the main artery. You know, if you study biology, artery is the main vein that takes blood to critical parts of the body. And corruption is the system. Corruption oils and lubricates the NRM government system. And so many, huge number of people are corrupt. And if you attempt to significantly end corruption, the government will come to a standstill. It will grind to a halt. And that takes me to the issue of where the president is concentrating on corruption by MPs, by arresting few of them. Majid, I have been in civil service for 25 years. I am so much conversant and knowledgeable on how corruption is conducted in government. Who is corrupt, who are the most corrupt. And I can state here, Majid, and to our viewers with a great sense of certainty, that the greatest area of corruption is the executive. Beginning with the ministers, going to technical officers, directors, commissioners, undersecretaries, permanent secretaries, and you just need to go around and see investments by commissioners, by directors, by senior civil servants, by ministers. You see people putting up gigantic structures. Every year somebody is putting up a gigantic structure, a hotel, a supermarket, and so on. And you rarely find this with members of parliament. I am not absolving members of parliament from any culpability in terms of corruption. Yes, there are some, but you can see whether a person, the level of the corruption of a person by the investment that person carries out. And you don't see that so much with the members of parliament.
Now, does that justify the kind of conflict that we are seeing today? I wouldn't want to go in there, but we are seeing some kind of conflict.
This current conflict, Majid, is really not about fighting corruption. This fight is about competition for resources in the corruption arena. And I can tell you, and I've spoken to some members of parliament about this, why this issue came about, and I had promised to address it, is that these areas, over time, members of parliament have discovered how the executive, how technical officers also steal. So they went for some of those very areas. They now know. You see areas like seminars. The MPs removed money from seminars, workshops, about 8 billion. That is where people loot money. As I've told you, Majid, I've been in civil service. Seminars, workshops are really areas where people loot. So they inflate costs, and in this particular case, it is about supervision and monitoring of PDM. You know, I have spoken to a number of people and really labored to sensitize them. This idea that after every election, government comes up with a program and they establish a secretariat in Kampala. There are people who make money through this enterprise. So you establish a PDM secretariat, this secretariat, and a lot of funds are channeled for supervision, for training, for workshops and seminars. And that is one of the areas where people loot money. The second area is these apparent donations. You are giving donations to private sector, to Soderi, you are bailing out that organization. What people in government are doing is this. So you buy shares in those organizations, private sector. So from government, you influence allocation to those private sectors. It is either your share or the private sector person will now pay you back. So members of parliament over time have understood these dynamics, these deals. So they went and cut money from those areas. So what these people went to tell the president is that, you see, parliament is taking over your powers of budgeting. Parliament is usurping your powers. Budgeting is your responsibility. Parliament should not have any role. That is why they went and stampeded the president. And unfortunately, the president also listened to them. And then he wrote this very angry, bitter letter, which I have already said, the content, the arguments are really not correct. But more importantly, the letter did not technically state the grievance of the president, because he was supposed to outline that this, you have cut this budget, he justifies the reason. It was not in the letter. Instead, it was his ministers who went and now gave the explanations on the floor of
You're
Parliament.
not talking about this.
Yes.
We did one thing that we did see as an observation was that this bill was not properly debated. That was my own opinion.
Yeah, but let me just start it out from the corrigenda. You know, corrigenda in a technical sense means that if you have made a bigger document, the main document, by oversight, you may have made some errors. So you correct them through what we call a corrigenda. So in this particular case, the Ministry of Finance made a draft budget of about 54 billion. At some point it went to 58 trillion. But when the process of now taking this budget for debate and approval in Parliament reached, the executive came up with an additional money, and this budget shot to 72 trillion through a corrigenda. And I can assure you, a corrigenda cannot, under any circumstance, be of the magnitude of raising the budget from 54 or 58 to 72. That is no longer a corrigenda. That amounts to a separate budget. It should have then gone through the committees and discussed through the budget committee, through the sessional committees. So it was taken to Parliament. The Parliament was stampeded. The Speaker did not allow debate. So she put the question. Those in favor say aye, to the contrary, nay. The nays were the loudest, but said the ayes have it. But once, you know, according to the rules, once the Speaker has already made a declaration, it cannot be reversed. But the rules permit that if 40 members of Parliament rise up, then you will go to lobbies to do physical count. And that is why I blame the members of Parliament. On this occasion, they abdicated their responsibility. They did not challenge the ruling of the Speaker.
Okay, you are blaming them. And now what does that exactly say of this 11th Parliament, in your opinion?
As I've said, I told you at some point I was happy that this has happened. So that the members of Parliament do a soul search. We have a saying in Rubarati, Tikariango ni invasi. That means that if you have not encountered problems, a cow which is, literally it means a cow which is delivering for the first time, will learn how to cry or more.
Okay.
So these members of Parliament should be able to now take hard lessons from this experience. They have been used before to satisfy the insatiable desires of the executive through irregular allocations, through approving of wrong policies. Now it is catching up with them, including arresting them, including humiliating them. The president has really humiliated them. From the Speaker. You know what the Speaker is going through? She has been sanctioned by the US. She has been sanctioned by the UK government. These are our two historical and most important partners. The other one is our former colonial master, the UK. And it is so embarrassing for a Speaker of a National Assembly to be sanctioned. So she has been humiliated. And if you read the letters of the president to her, the president was really trying to encircle her, persistently writing, hey, do you have property in the UK? Do you have a house? See, the idea is to mount political pressure on her, to mount political pressure on Parliament, to humiliate Parliament, arrest a few of them, humiliate them, and of course what they did to begin with was to sponsor the exhibitions. I can guarantee to you the people in the system were the ones supplying the information.
Okay.
Because some of the information of financial misappropriation coming from Parliament would be very hard for an ordinary person to obtain. So this exhibition was being fed by people deep in the system. You know, now the NRM government has planted intelligence in every sector in the budgeting process, in every office. So they are the ones who supplied this information to the journalists who were carrying out the exhibitions. That has now embarrassed the parliament. The parliament is being embarrassed and humiliated. So the idea is to weaken it, so that if you want something to be passed through this parliament, it will be easy. Because the parliament now fears, the MPs are fearing. So if you bring something, they will say, now let me just approve, because I can save myself from being apprehended, arrested. Because now every MP is potentially a suspect, because the president has blanketly accused them of corruption. But as you have somehow pointed out, the idea and practice of reallocating is not new. It has been taking place over the years. The president has never complained about it. Why is he complaining about it now? And as we have been told, the MPs have also been revealing that there are occasions when he has summoned the budget committee to State House and asked them to find for him money for ABCD. So why was it okay for him, under some circumstances, to ask Parliament, the MPs, budget committee, of course subsequently the entire House, to find for him resources for some of his pet programs?
Okay.
But not in this case, when Parliament has taken a decision to find the resources to improve the livelihood of the common person in the rural area.
Okay. As we are now planning to run for a break, Honorable, I believe there's a message and there's also really going to be an implication of these actions that are ongoing to all. What do you see?
Yeah, the implication, there's going to be implication. I've already mentioned one of them. Parliament somehow, of course, President Museveni weakened Parliament long ago with the other institutions. But this is really putting the last nail on the coffin of Parliament. You remember a number of approvals had been done with the protests from the opposition. By the way, including these very budgets that have been passed. Our colleagues in the opposition in Parliament have always produced minority reports to state that most of the priorities government has are wrong. They are not priorities of the country. There is a lot of wastage. A lot of the monies are being taken to the private sector, to individuals. Those who are, there is one in Busoga, I think, who is putting up a pharmacy. There are allocations that have been given to Sudir and others. We have protested as opposition through our opposition members of Parliament to disagree with many of the positions government took. But the majority side has always been approving and siding with the president. Now reality, as I've said, is catching up with them. So that is the first impact. The second is that, you see, the President Museveni wants to be the permanent fixture in Uganda's politics. Other players can change. He does not want to associate with the group perpetually.
Okay. Because
if you associate with a group perpetually, in the process they can know your weaknesses, they understand your strength. Sometimes they become difficult to deal with. Sometimes they will resist some of your desires. So what he does is to perpetually alter. In this particular case, Parliament, you know, can become a headache. So through this process, he damages the image of Parliament. And everywhere he goes, he will be talking about corruption in Parliament, corruption. So that will result in many of the members of Parliament losing their seats.
Okay.
So you will bring a fresh team. So when you bring a fresh team from the NRM side, they will be more than happy to fulfill your interest. So that is his calculation.
A loyal team now.
So he will bring another loyal team also.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, dear viewer, that is none other than Honorable DRANI Martin. He is a former MP aspirant for Terego West, also really, who said he lost.
Actually, I was a candidate, not an aspirant. I was nominated.
You are nominated.
I was nominated, but these NRM people, you know, they fear.
So somebody is still sitting.
Fear opposition.
Meaning somebody is still sitting on your seat.
Yeah, in our language there we say, so somebody inherited him.
Okay, dear viewer, and we are still going to be continuing that discussion after the break. For now, let's have this quick important breather as we bounce back shortly. Stay tuned.
Mbappe, Cristiano Ronaldo, Hurricane, Sané, Griezmann, Lewandowski, and many more. Mbappe! Who is your European star? We are very familiar with all German stadia. Trust us to give you the best Euro experience affordably. Catch the matches live on NBS Sport, channel 255 on antenna or channel 199 on Dish Decoder on Star Times. We got your stars. This message is brought to you by Star Times Solar. Star Times Solar, more than just solar.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
All right, welcome back from that short commercial break. This is KOKOLIRIKO live on West Nile TV channel 477 on Star Times and online across all our social media platforms. And we want to take this opportunity now to welcome you into our second hour of the show. And we are still looking also into the appropriation bill that has been the talk of the nation for quite some period of days now. And we are now dissecting it. We want to make sure that you as the viewer understands this also in totality. Because if at all you don't understand it, then definitely you may not also really understand that. And this is also really something some people are hearing for the very first time. I don't know what says that, what that means. That is to our civic engagement in there, because many people are actually hearing the appropriation bill for the very first time. And you also really did explain it that this is the budget, which many people did not actually really understand in there. And I hope the viewer who is watching us right from the time we began until now also really now has it in understanding. And this is where now we want to ask, because we did see the president refusing to sign this, but we did see also already the bill being returned also in the floor of parliament, where also already a few days ago it was now signed officially by the MPs. Now it means that also already now the president has penned his signature on the budget, and that follows already scrutiny where some priorities were also diverted here and there. What does it mean? Has he finally received what belongs to him?
Yeah, one can say yes, because his wish was now granted by Parliament. What Parliament did was just simply to approve it. They were now angry and bitter, but as I've explained, there is now, the environment in Parliament is toxicated, it is toxic, there's a lot of fear, frustration, suspicion, so the MPs somehow said to redeem themselves, to avoid the possibility of being victims of the next arrest. Let us just simply pass this thing because the president is very bitter. So in that sense, yes, he got what he wanted, but we must state that the people of Uganda lost on this occasion. So it is a sad moment that allocations to critical service areas that will directly impact on the livelihood of the citizens, ordinary citizens, that woman down there, that sick person who will be rescued through those ambulances. You know that maternal deaths are the second biggest killer in this country. The first being malaria, maternal deaths, and road accidents. For the road, we lose about 13 people per day. For mothers, we lose about 20 people per day. Malaria is much higher. So those interventions that will be catered for through those reallocations will now not be done. But let me just state that this is a wake-up call for us citizens, particularly those who love this country, who are patriotic, that we must now get serious about our leaders. When we are putting people in office, when you are electing a government, you must be able to elect a government that cares about the people, not a government that cares about leaders. I already stated at the beginning of this show that tragically, our current president has made his government about leaders. He wants to create convenience of leaders, to make them happy, and channel most of resources to their welfare and to their well-being. So in that sense, yes, he got what he wanted.
Okay. Now that brings me to the question, looking at what is happening in Kenya, the discussion has also really been about the budget. In Uganda, we're also talking about the budget. But the environment is not the same. Looking at what is happening in Uganda, many Ugandans seem not even to understand what the budget is all about. True or right? True or false? Sorry.
It is true. The civic consciousness in this country is lower than in Kenya. As you see in Kenya, it is so amazing, but I will explain the differences. So, something I didn't say about our Ugandan experience is this. You know, if you followed, you journalists, sometimes you are critical. By the time when this bill was being referred back to Parliament, there was police deployment, further to humiliate and intimidate members of Parliament. There was heavy deployment around the precincts of Parliament. So the president was trying to demonstrate that what is happening in Kenya cannot and should not happen here. He wanted to create a sense and fear, because in Kenya the demonstrations led at some moment to occupation of Parliament by the Gen Z protesters. So yes, for Kenya, the level of civic competence consciousness is higher. When Mwai Kibaki came to power, he did something very amazing. He provided high quality education, free quality education. Unlike what we have in Uganda, where rarely children go to school, but there is no education. So here we provide schooling. We don't provide education. And so children come out of school very raw. The learning outcomes, Majid, are declining. By learning outcomes, we mean the ability to read, write, interpret. When a child goes to classroom, what does that child come up with? Competence and skills are low.
Is it by mistake or intention?
It is by design. I have spoken again publicly so many times on this subject. It is by design. The idea is weaken the population through poor quality education, so that the children of few people get quality education through private sector education. They are the ones who continue running government and leading this country. That it's a big political calculation, which unfortunately many of our people don't know. But so in Kenya, Mwai Kibaki did it differently. He provided quality education. The youth are highly educated. They can make good judgment. So they are able to understand their government system. They are able to understand that the tax bill. You know, in Kenya, unlike in Uganda, once they pass the budget, they do the tax bill. The tax bill is simply, put in a layman's language, the avenues through which government will raise money to fulfill the budget. So government puts in place a number of taxes on excise duty and imports on products it proposes. So in this particular case, the taxes were raised. Their budget came to around 4 trillion. Actually, the last time I checked, it was 3.9 trillion. And of that, 400 billion was going to counties, the 47 counties. And in one of the forums, if you are there, I spoke about this. They are better than us by funding their decentralized organs. So about 11% of their national budget goes to counties, which are devolved units. So they presented a budget of 3.9 trillion, close to 4 trillion. So when the tax bill came, it contained high taxes. So the young people, the Gen Zs, the Generation Z, started protests because they understood the impact of these high taxes on them, on the country. So the level of consciousness in Kenya is extremely very high.
Okay.
But more importantly, many people do not know that one of the contestations in Kenya, which is part of the grievance in these current demonstrations that are going on, is about corruption itself, opulent lifestyle of the leaders. You know, KK Alliance, KK government in Kenya is a friend of the NRM government. They have yellowed that side, and so they have copied the corruption here. So once this government came to power 2 years ago, they campaigned, of course, very hard. Many of the people in Kenya Kwanza who are now in leadership had corruption scandals. So what they did was they did everything possible to ensure that they go to government so that they shield and protect themselves from prosecution.
Okay.
So having entered office, they resumed. They continued from where they left with the corruption. And I can tell you some of the incidences are so shameful. People are buying posh, expensive vehicles. People are traveling abroad on chartered planes. And the other day, you know, I follow their politics extremely very closely. I was hearing something about one of them, some of the top people there who had bought a private jet. So the Kenyan citizens are looking at this because of the high level of civic competence and consciousness. They are able to voice their dissatisfaction, their disaffection with this level of impunity that the KK government is exhibiting in Kenya, amidst challenges that the citizens are facing. And they have recognized that, you know, this opulent lifestyle the leaders are having in Kenya is a result of their taxes. So they are recovering their country. They are demonstrating, which unfortunately in this country we don't care about. In fact, in Uganda, the more corrupt a leader is, the more he or she is worshipped.
That is actually,
people will be very happy.
That is actually where I wanted to come to, because some of these members of parliament who were actually also pinned for taking this part of this money for themselves say they shared it with their electorates. Yeah,
the speaker announced it, Luengo.
Because in Luengo, that is what the parliament they are saying.
In Luengo, the speaker now declared, plus some of the MPs, that you see, you people, you should not condemn your daughter, Sisi. Sisi, you remember, initially worked in the State House office of the president and became a member of parliament. And so the speaker declared that so long as a person steals and sells part and spends part of it on the population, that is no problem. And one of the newspapers in this country, I think the Observer, if you saw the headline was, "Corruption gets official endorsement." I said, now, finally, corruption has got official endorsement. But the newspaper was wrong. Official endorsement of corruption was done long years ago when the president said, no, let us not bad about it. Say, so long as you invest.
Those who steal the money and move it at the outside.
Don't move it out. He said, so long as they invest in the country, there is no problem. So, corruption attained official status long ago. The speaker was only buttressing, enforcing. He was only now hitting the last nails. So, I explained to you how corruption has become endemic and systemic in the system. So, if a speaker can say this, if a speaker can publicly, in full view of TVs, national media, international media, declare that, you know, so long as what is stolen, part of it is shared with the electorate. But then how do you know how much has the person stolen, how much has the person shared with the population? And Majid, I did my first dissertation in university at Makerere University, in my undergraduate studies, fortunately was on corruption. That was way back in 1992 when you were not born.
Surely.
So I did my first dissertation. I'm a graduate of political science and public administration. So we will get some funding from the Department of Political Science to carry out a research. I did it on corruption. I have since updated my knowledge and experiences of corruption over the years. This corruption we are talking about, I have mentioned parts of it already in my earlier presentation. This government finds it is an easy way of staying in government, in power for a long time. How does it work? It works exactly the way the Speaker, Honorable Anita Among, explained. So me as Andua Martin, if I'm a minister, I can steal 50 billion. So that 50 billion will do work on primary schools, health centers, the drugs will be there. People will not buy drugs from pharmacies. Children will not go to private primary and secondary schools. The way we went to school, you have gone, you grew in a wrong period. For us, you will go to a primary school. The son of a minister will go to Nakasero primary. All of you will end up in Makerere. This is not the case now. You have to go to a private school to meet the minister's son in university. For us, and if you went to university, government will pay for you.
Okay.
There was nothing like private university education. So that money which government, the UPC government, government used to spend on children of poor people to buy drugs and provide education, the current politicians steal it. So one person can steal 50 billion. Okay. He will spend 100 million to distribute in the constituency. Okay. So the voters feel happy.
Okay, that is actually
people want instant benefit.
That is actually where I'm coming to that point, because the speaker didn't say that this point not steal the money. But they just channeled this.
Because the meaning,
and I believe that is also having an impact at the end of the day, because we are getting closer to 2026. What will that mean?
See, so as I was explaining, so the minister, say a government official, a director, commissioner, and you steal 50 billion, so you use 50 million of that. You splash it in the constituency. 100 shillings, 1,000 shillings. The population feels happy, they give you the votes. Meanwhile, the services of education, healthcare, agriculture suffer. So the government leaders, the politicians enrich themselves. They spend a small part of that money, 1,000 I give you. You feel happy.
So
but that 1,000...
In other words, does that justify to the monetization of our politics now?
Yeah, that 1,000, you know, what our voters don't realize is this 1,000 cannot fulfill your needs. You will go to hospital, you don't find the drugs. You spend your own money, 200, 300,000 to buy drugs in a pharmacy. You go to a primary school, the quality is poor. You must spend millions to take a child to a private school. So our population, our citizens have not understood these dynamics, what the NRM is doing. So you weaken them through taking away the resources from the services of education, healthcare, agriculture. You steal that money. You only take a small part to excite them during an election. Okay. So they have to wait for another 5 years
for you to return back.
You come back. They give you 5 years to steal. So you steal for 5 years. You give a small part to them. Okay. So that 1,000, they don't realize that it cannot pay your child in a school. It cannot buy for you drugs even to treat one dose of, to provide 1 dose of malaria. But it works miracles in a voting context because the poor people say, for me, I got my money from ANDUA, I got money from Majid, I must pay back through a vote. So that explains why the NRM government has remained in brackets, in quotes, strong. Because they use this system and approach and dynamics.
That now, as we get to move on with time, because time may not be our best ally, we're just left with about 9 minutes to wind up with the discussions. And then there's one thing I need to understand, still related to what is happening in Kenya. It has, the riots also came out as a result of the budget, and this is something we're not seeing here. And many people are actually saying the tax bill is a copy and paste of what's happening in Uganda. But in Uganda, we seem to be quiet and we seem to be okay with everything, but which is not in Kenya, because this is actually clearly manifested during the riots. We are seeing people carrying placards saying this is not Uganda. It was clearly seen also during the placards.
The reason, and they burned our embassy, the Ugandan embassy. They believe in Kenya is strong, that Ruto is getting advice from here. And Kenya Kwanza, as I explained, is a friend of NRM government. And that side, they also adopted the yellow, the yellow color. And I can state also authoritatively that Ruto has investments in Uganda. I don't know if you know. If I took you outside here, I will show you some of them. So he has investments here. So there is bitterness in Kenya that their problems are a result of the association and the relationship Kenya Kwanza has with Uganda. So they express some bitterness about this perceived belief that the practices and culture the leaders there are now exhibiting is a result of the practices in Uganda. I don't want to say so much about that, but the evidence really abounds. It is for everybody to see. So for them, yes, the consciousness is very high. The tax bill, they are able to interpret and understand it. They are holding their leaders to account. You see, through this demonstration, they are holding their leaders to account. And they are being able to force President Ruto to decline assent to the bill. The president feared, he understood the magnitude, and he declined to sign the bill. Now, the Gen Zs have extended their demand to his resignation. So we are not yet about to say an end to the protests that are taking place in Kenya. We cannot exactly state with a great amount of certainty as to how this is going to end, because the demand for President Ruto to resign is very, very high. You remember, if you followed the elections 2 years ago, the difference was extremely narrow. Ruto won by about 200,000 votes. Just about 200,000 votes. This is a very small margin. It means the country is really divided almost equally into two. The contestations in this respect are extremely very high. The tensions will be high. The opposition parties, particularly the ODM plus the Azimio party leaders, the alliance has now also joined the Gen Zs to call for the resignation of President Ruto. And yesterday I was listening to the Minister of Defense, the CS for Defense, Duale, and he was spiritedly defending the president, that there is no way the president can resign. He has been doing wonderful work. But the protests really demonstrate that the citizens are dissatisfied. By the way, in that protest, those who campaigned and supported Ruto have joined, because Ruto won that election primarily by presenting and projecting himself and his KK alliance as pro-poor party and leader. He spoke about the hustlers, who are mainly the youth. He spoke, currently they are the ones on the streets. He spoke about the mama mboga, the ordinary women there. They are going to be given money, and he was copying this from Uganda. every after election we do this thing in Uganda. It is Emyoga, it is PDM, it is this. So he was copying from Uganda, and he is unable to fulfill.
Okay, that speaks a lot, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. I believe that speaks a lot because we are just left with about 5 minutes. I don't know what your final say on this matter as we get to move on, and that is towards the postponement of the LC elections for yet another 180 days. But before, your final maybe word on this issue that we have been discussing right from the first hour.
Now, I would like to appeal to the citizens of this country to take action. The budget that we make is funded by the taxpayers.
Not through demonstrations.
I'm going to come to that.
Okay.
So the taxpayers of this country are the ones funding the budget. What government uses, what NRM uses, when they abuse, when they steal, I told you, and the country knows, we lose about 10 trillion through theft. Actually, to call it theft is an understatement. We better say it is robbery. So it is our money being stolen. It is your money. It is everybody's money. We are killing the future of this country. So the citizens, we have elections in 2026. Take responsibility. Hold your leaders to account. Let us fight this vice, corruption. Let us improve our schools, our health care. There is no need for me to go to a rural hospital. I just go to see a doctor, and then I go to buy drugs outside. Our schools have collapsed. Everything is coming to a standstill, literally, in this country. Donors, by the way, are withdrawing funding, and that is putting this government under pressure. It is one of the reasons you are having this fight, this bitterness and anger, because a number of donors are holding back the support that they were giving this country. So the citizens need to be active. You spoke about demonstrations. They are provided for in our law.
But
peaceful demonstrations.
Not wish to promote that.
It is provided for under our laws.
Okay.
Except in Uganda, President Museveni does not like it.
But we wouldn't see lives.
He does not like it because
like
it has to be peaceful. It is provided for in the law.
Because we are seeing lives also being lost in Kenya as well.
The lives are being lost because of two things. One, the police reacted by using disproportionate force. At the beginning, the protests were very peaceful. Even security were accompanying the protesters. So protests are provided for under our law. They are a means of expression of discontent and dissatisfaction.
Okay.
Except they have to be carried out within the provisions
of the law.
law.
And that is where we come to the end of the discussions, as we are also really going to be seeing the term of office for the LCs also be extended for yet another 180 days. And now the Ministry of Local Government has for the third time extended the term of office for these LCs, and the July letter dated 2nd published in the National Gazette. We did see the elections be extended for this period of time. What does this mean? Because this is now the very third time we are seeing these elections being postponed. I don't know when the last time you went into polls to vote for these LCs, and this is where we are saying we are going to be seeing them still be in the office for yet another 180 days. What does that mean to service delivery?
Majid, I am also somebody who has studied decentralization, decentralization governance systems. We were pioneers in 1992 at Makerere University when this government started decentralization as a policy. The late Professor Plosimbambi, who had already taken early retirement, had to be recalled back to Makerere University, particularly to the Department of Political Science, to teach decentralization, to prepare students for the then impending decentralization policy government was starting. And you know, then from 1992, 93, 1 year later on, we had the first batch of about 13 districts that were decentralized. So I have been in the system of decentralized governance and service delivery for a very long time, but I've also studied the theories. Our decentralization structures through the local councils as a country has a lot of problems. And government has found it difficult to finance their elections. Why? Because there are too many. You have villages, you have parishes, you have sub-county, you have district, you have municipalities, you have cities. In other words, Uganda is over-governed. We have too many structures. How many districts do we have now, Majid? I don't know if you know the numbers.
Yes.
Me as a senior civil, I retired as a senior civil servant. I don't even know the number of districts we have. There are over 100. We have about 6-7 cities. We have, I think, over 30 municipalities. Of course, with all local council structures. Earlier in the debate, I spoke to you about Kenya, with only 47 counties. 47. And in fact, they are complaining. They want to reduce the number of counties. Initially, the recommendation was lower, but because of the selfish mentality of politicians, they created 47. But here we have over 100. I think we are going to 200 if you add cities, municipalities. We have thousands and thousands of LC1s, LC2s, village and parish. So for you to manage this structure through election is simply extremely expensive. So you will be deceiving yourself that you can get money to finance the election of this structure.
So in other words, should we agree that this money is not there as alleged? It
is providing money for electing these people is dead on arrival. Okay. You can't do it. We are struggling. The first part of our debate, I explained to you, Uganda is struggling. We are struggling. The resources are not there. So the other day they are praying we get oil, but the resources are not there. Donors have pulled out funding. We are not collecting all the money. In this budget they are talking about URA raising 52 trillion. It will never happen. They will raise about 20 to 30. So we will have serious deficit. So government is deceiving itself that they will be able to provide funds to conduct LC elections. You remember when the EC issued the roadmap, they asked for money. Okay. I cannot remember the figure. It was difficult for government to even make that money available. They had to cut it.
Okay. Honorable, as we are running out of time, I don't know what that will mean to service delivery in just 1 minute.
It means nothing. It means nothing because the LCs will continue in office. Now against the law, they can only issue this statutory instrument extending. There is no foreseeable, nothing in the foreseeable future that you can conduct elections for the LCs. I have been advocating and proposing that we need to restructure our decentralization systems. Reduce these structures. There are simply too many. Besides the LCs, Majid, you are also talking about special interest groups. You are talking about women councils, youth councils, councils for the elderly, council for this and that, council for this and that. So I have already stated we are over-governed. So we are paying a price of creating very many structures. And why President Museveni did this is to extend support. Because these structures initially were called resistance councils from Luero. So they were replicated across the country. They have been used as part of the NRM structure and organ. Okay. So he creates many of them so that he uses them as a campaign structure and vehicle. So he will get stuck, remain with them, but the elections, Majid, I can assure you, will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to conduct unless we change the law and devise some cheaper way of conducting them, maybe by people lining up behind the candidates. Okay, lining up could also really be an option, but though it may not be that efficient, and that is where we're saying we need elections, much as they are being extended for another 180 days. We shall be keeping and still keep you informed if at all the day 180 days elapse. Shall we go into polls? That is one thing also really we shall be following up, and that is where we come to the end of the discussions. And today we were joined by Honorable ANDUA DRANI Martin, who has been also really one of the candidates in the recently concluded that
2021 general elections, where he did aspire as MP, that is for Terego West in there. And I do hope that you had a wonderful time with him. And with that, we come to the end of the discussions, as we also bounce back for yet some few minutes, and that will be also ushering us to the next program, that is of AOL News Bulletin. But for now, let's have this quick important breather as we bounce back shortly.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
Mbappe, Cristiano Ronaldo, Harry Kane, Sané, Griezmann, Lewandowski, and many more. Who is your European star? We are very familiar with all German stadia. Trust us to give you the best Euro experience affordably. Catch the matches live on NBS Sport, channel 255 on antenna or channel 199 on Dish Decoder on Star Times. We got your stars. This message is brought to you by Star Times Solar. Star Times Solar, more than just solar.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
All right, welcome back from that short commercial break, as we are just left with some few minutes. And now, to keep you informed of some of the stories that transpired yesterday, we did see riots that is at Gaga Market after a group of angry protesters stormed where voting was being conducted and threw away election people who were voting there. And this is solely where they demanded for the leadership who is also in office to continue. And that is what we did see yesterday, where these angry protesters solely demanded for the people to leave and vacate the place. And what we did see was that the tents started flying, and we did see also the boxes being thrown away, and the people who were there had to take for their lives. And this is where we are saying we do not want violence. If at all you do not want elections, why don't you use the right channels? And this is something we did see yesterday at Gaga Market, and these people actually pinned the town clerk central division, Drakuma Malik, for being behind these fresh polls, which they did reject in there. And what will that mean if at all people continue to take the laws in their hands just that way? It means a lot. And then means that also really this is setting a bad precedent, and that is where we did see Drakuma also really coming out to also explain, Machas disposed constitution states that it is the vice chairperson of the previous regime who is supposed to oversee the new elections, and this is something that also really that didn't go on well with the leaders who cited their constitution. And now we did see also Dakuma coming up with the Market Act and saying that this market is also really under to be governed by the Central Division, and this is where the Market Act also really applies. And he cited so many irregularities that also really didn't go on in the first election, where he did state that also really some of the things that were supposed to be done were not followed also really in the last also elections in there. For instance, display of voter registrar, which wasn't something done, and some of the people who actually contested the results, and that is why they opted for fresh polls. But we did see through governance of Charles Chogor, through that is also really his deputy, that is Hamezam Zamil, guided that these elections be postponed for yet another period of time until these grievances are first of all addressed. That is when they will be also really entering into fresh polls in there. But that is something we need to see going on at Gaga Market. More details that will be coming through in our subsequent news bulletins of Eolaza. For those who understand Lugbara, Feta Emmanuel is also really coming through with more details to that. And later on, we shall also really be having that report on Nilecast News Bulletin, and as well Lembangea in there. And that is where, if at all you want to see what happened, just stay locked to West Nile TV, Nilecast News Bulletin. Lembangea and Eolaza, they will also be here in position to keep you informed in line to that. And that is one thing also we did see happening, and we also did see so many stories. And nationally, we also really seeing a former deputy RCC, Burora, being remanded over spreading hate speech. Is also another story that we are seeing, where former Rubaga Division Deputy Resident City Commissioner Herbert Anderson Burora has been remanded to Luzira prison over charges of spreading malicious information in here, and maybe what did they use to charge him. And we are saying, for those who are using social media in a negative way, definitely the Computer Misuse Act may also really catch up with you, and that is also really where we did see this man also really be charged in there. And on Wednesday, Burora was arrested and arraigned before also Buganda Road Chief Magistrate, that is Ronald Kaizi, who also read the speech about that also hate speech and malicious also information charges contrary to the Computer Misuse Act in there. And we are saying, for those who may also wish to use the social media in a way, definitely I may sue you, and you will be able to also be arrested in there. And the accused denied both charges in there, and the Chief Magistrate remanded Burora until July 9th, also really inciting need to resolve the issue of the charges sheet also really legality before hearing the bail application in there. And the decision was prompted also by the Chief State Attorney Richard Birivu Mboka, also really, who sought more time to respond to submissions made by Burora's defense team, which contended also really the sheet's charge was defective in there. And the defense team led by David Kamukama argued that the charge sheet failed also really to specify how Burora demanded Parliament Speaker Honorable Anita Among in there and to also provide evidence of the alleged offense in there. And remember, he has also really been charged, that is for also really destroying the peace of the Speaker of Parliament in there. Remember, this is something also really which we are not supposed to be doing, and this is where sometimes we see people, more so those who use the social media, may also really want to misuse it, and we are saying the law may catch up with you, and that is why we must avoid that. Because if at all we are not avoiding that, then definitely the Computer Misuse Act, which is already in place, may also really catch up with you in that. Prosecution led by Viruka together with Joan Keko and Ivan Chiaze said that Burora also between March and July, also June 2024, in Kampala district, also really via the Twitter handle, which is already known as X, had also had to be shared information likely to ridicule, degrade, demean, and promote hostility against also Among in there. And on the second count, prosecution alleges that also Burora shared malicious information relating to Among in there, and that is where we did see him also be also charged in there. And that is one thing also where we want to put off our discussions in relation to that aside with, and more details will be coming still in our other programs, and we want to keep it locked there. But as usual, before we get to move on, to summarize the whole information with what is also really happening in the world of sports. And this is where we are seeing stories right from what is happening regionally and also internationally in there. And looking at what's happening regionally, we are now talking about also the schools going on with other games that we are seeing them going on. Clubs are already busy in the market, and now we are seeing players also already moving here and there. And now the teams in West Nile, we are going to be having 4 teams also representing in the big league in here. And on the side note, we are the names that will not be also at ANDUA Football Club. One of the gigantic clubs that has been there for over a long period of time is actually James Jericho, who has been with the club. And recently he did also really announce his departure from the club, and now he is also really being linked with the move to that is NEC Football Club. And there he is going to be joining other colleagues with whom he was at ANDUA Football Club, and notable among also include Dudu Bosco, the tactician. He is going to be working with him there, and also the players like Gaddafi Wahab and many others with whom he is going to be interacting in there. And I believe if he joins that club, definitely he is going to be not finding a difficult environment in there. And looking also at some of the names, Nelson Mandela, who has already been with the ANDUA Football Club after joining on a short stint from Arua Hill Sports Club, is also linked with the move that is to Lugazi Football Club, which is also really a newly promoted side in there. And these are names that also really will be leaving the services also really to the club in there, and that means also the club has to restructure and also really go into the market and sign new players in there. And looking at leaving that aside, internationally, the Euros are still going on, and yesterday we did see also really games going on, and we are going to still be keeping you informed in line to that. And now looking at what happened yesterday, so many games already happened, and maybe in different categories, and maybe to just keep you and give you a small hint of some of the games that did go on yesterday. More details will be coming through tomorrow. And remember, the Euros are still going on, the Copa America is also still going on, and that means only you as the viewer must keep it locked. That West Nile TV Whistle Time will be also coming through here. That is with Owen Ezega, together with Linda Susie, who will also be keeping you that is still locked in there. And looking at some of the games that will be going on tomorrow, we shall be having the quarterfinals of the Euros, where Spain will be taking on Germany, as Portugal will also be playing France in there. And the Copa America as well, we shall be having games, as Argentina will be taking on Ecuador, and that means the games are just getting towards the end, and that is where I'm saying it gets hotter, and the higher it goes, the higher the pressure authority becomes. It means that the teams already in preparation solely of exit, already of continuing in there. And more details at what is happening in the world of sports will be coming through our program. That is the Whistle Time. Owen Ezaga together with Linda Susie, who will be here from 2 to 3 p.m. to give you that comprehensive and detailed analysis of what is happening in the world of sports. And with me, I want to stop here and also pave way for that is the Eolas News Bulletin, as Feta Emmanuel is already here, and we shall be bouncing back tomorrow for the final edition of